Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Silent Hill podcast. Alright, it is that time to talk about the very final boss encountered within the first Silent Hill game. This one is fascinating to note that it's actually made up in two parts, i.e., there's two versions of this boss. And for most of this video, I'm going to talk about what is considered the canon version, like the most true version of the final boss, and the one that most people encounter within the game, which is done if you do both good and good plus endings, then you encounter this version. And then very briefly I'll talk about the other type of version that you'll encounter if you do the bad plus the bad plus endings. I kind of hate it when games do this because ultimately it seems like you're going to have to do a bunch of things you don't want to do within the game just to see the other endings, but that is the case with the Silent Hill game. And of course, I'm talking about the final boss known as the Incubus, or in some cases, if you do the bad endings, it's called the Incubator. But first off, let's talk about the Incubus. Again, it's the very final boss, the big baddie, the one that pretty much you've been playing the whole game to get to. And finally, when you get to this boss, there's a very large cutscene that goes into place where all the main characters come into play. I mean, you have finally Alessa there, then you have Cheryl, then you have Harry, of course, being the main character. Then you have, in some cases, Sybil. She shows up. Then you have Alessa, like some versions of Alessa at least. And then you have also Dahlia, the mother. And then finally you have Kaufman also show up. So everybody is here in full force. And there's that cutscene which showcases essentially Harry finally confronting everybody, and then with the mother revealing her final plans, and then finally with regards to Alessa slash Cheryl turning into this monster. It was quite a surprise to see Kaufman there and how he essentially broke up the big plans that Dahlia had by throwing whatever that red liquid was onto Alessa, which in turn created this, the Incubus. The Incubus, once Alessa is doused with that red liquid of some sort, she starts going into some convulsions, some extreme pains on her part. Obviously, whatever this thing is, it is not something that she likes, that she has been doused with. And whenever she finally just collapses on the floor, something starts crawling outside of her back. And when it does so, it's tiny at first, but then it starts growing larger and larger until it rises up, spreads its full wings, and then that is when you encounter this Incubus in its full state. It's an ugly looking thing. Obviously, it's supposed to be a manifestation of pretty much everything bad that you ever think of when it comes to religion. Like anything involving the devil, anything involving demons, anything involving bad spirits, it looks like it altogether. And it is by far the most powerful thing within the entire game. Apparently, if you have even just a little bit of health gone, whenever it starts its attack, one single strike is enough to kill you. So here's what this Incubus does. Once it rises up, and then once it's able to essentially do its thing, what's funny to note is that Dahlia, for all the work that she's done throughout the entire game, all the manipulations for who knows how long, I mean, with the state of the game being years in some cases, she went through all of this only to be quickly struck down by this thing through a slash of red lightning. That's its main attack, by the way. Obviously, it slashes with this red lightning coming in multiple spurts. It seems to strike, I think, 3 times altogether. And so the very first thing it does is it strikes Dahlia. She instantly dies, and then it finally takes on Harry altogether. Interestingly enough, Kaufman survives this initial attack. He should have been killed, obviously, with the power that this thing has, but with, I guess, him being knocked out early on throughout the game, whatever this thing is, this Incubus, it just didn't pay attention to him afterward, and so his life was unwittingly saved, at least for the moment. Now, with regards to the Incubus finally taking on Harry, once it rises up, it could just continues its attack. It starts sending those bolts of lightning Very, very sinister lightning. I mean, the sound, the fury, the animation that the people placed from Silent Hill, the developers on this lightning, it worked out very, very well. Because when it struck, it would strike very hard. And again, one single strike, if you're just a tiny bit below your health, is enough to kill you. And the guy that I was watching on the playthrough realized this, because every time he was struck, he immediately paused the game and went back to fill up his health. Apparently he had stored throughout the entire game. He was just storing and storing and storing health just for this purpose. And then once the incubus just essentially stopped its pattern, maybe it needed to recharge or maybe it needed to find a better spot, but it was always like a timed pattern. It would stop, and then that gave the main character, Harry, enough time to take out his most uh, blistering attack, which is the hunting rifle, and then shoot at it several times. And then the incubus would again strike once more, and the pattern would continue where it would start, it would stop, Harry would shoot, and then it would start and it would stop. There's another alternative which involves running around, but the way I saw that this incubus shot its lightning, you could run around as much as you can, but this lightning just doesn't go in one direction, it goes in multiple directions. And so you would have to be doing really, really well when it comes to moving the PlayStation's joystick in order to get to the right spots where that lightning is not going. Otherwise, load up on the health and be sure to keep it ready, be sure to keep it handy, and then that way anything that the strike occurs, pause, refill your health, and then continue as is. Finally, if you do enough shots and you last long enough, then the incubus dies. With a final shot, it lets out like some kind of malevolent growl of some sort, and then it finally just collapses. And then there's several cutscenes, and then we'll talk about that here in a minute. But first, let's talk about the incubus itself. What's interesting to note also is whenever you first get into the level, there's this eerie sound, like a drill-like sound. A little bit of trivia: if it sounded like a drill that's playing over while the incubus is attacking, is because it actually is a drill. Apparently, the Silent Hill developers used a dentist drill, which everyone hates the sound of, and they manipulated it to further its effect to make it sound even more sinister, and that way it's supposed to represent essentially the encounter of this thing, whatever the incubus is. Now, what it's supposed to represent, whatever its symbolism is, basically it is the actual god that whatever the order was within Silent Hill was worshipping and was trying to bring into the real world. And they were using Alessa essentially as the catalyst, as the thing that would help bring this god over from whatever world it was into the real world. Why the Order was doing it, I have no idea. Things are still a little vague. I'm a little confused why Dahlia and why the Order would go through all this, because considering what this thing can do, and considering how malevolent and how ruthless and evil it is, there really is no good that it can do. And there was even one point where Dahlia was saying that it would essentially cleanse all, everybody's, I believe she said, sins, and punish those that look to do wicked things. But other than that, I mean, was she expecting anything else other than just 100% attacks and killings and so forth left and right? Because this thing, whatever it was, it's again the god that essentially the Order worships. All it is just pure destruction. And so why it was brought over, I have no idea. But again, that's just the way the game goes. So that's what it's really 100% supposed to represent. Anything else, it's not really tied directly to Alessa. In other words, she didn't create it. It's not supposed to represent something tied to Alessa from her childhood, nothing like that. Essentially, it's its own thing, it's its own being. And in that case, again, it is 100% the actual entity, the actual god itself that they're trying to bring over. What's interesting to note is that even with its powerful form and its powerful strikes, we barely just got a glimpse of its power, like a tiny taste, because of its premature birth. That red liquid, or whatever that thing was that Kaufman launched at it, it essentially caused it to be born prematurely, so it only was born with a fraction of its power. So one could imagine if that red liquid had not hit it, and instead, let's say, it came to fruition on its own, it would have been much more powerful than what was encountered within the game. Harry would probably not have stood a chance at all, let alone anyone else anywhere else in the world, and so that would have been pure destruction, non-stop, non-checked, just happening everywhere. As far as also what it's supposed to represent, it's supposed to be, and on an interesting note, Dahlia's image of what the god is. So apparently, how it looks, the evil status of it, how it looks, again, basically everything bad that you would think of in anything involving religion, it comes from Dahlia's mental image of what the god is supposed to look. So she, in some way, helped influence how this thing looks. Kind of interesting to note, because it shows the mindset that Dahlia has, because if she was said, let's say, thinking that it was going to be something more heavenly looking, or something more, I guess, good looking, more positive looking, then definitely it would have looked that way. Otherwise, nope, it is 100% sometimes influenced by Dahlia itself, and that's what it's supposed to represent. The incubus also is various, I guess, versions of Tails, other beings. Like, in other words, it's supposed to be, the concept of it is supposed to be something like a deity called Baphomet, which you'll see a picture of here, and you'll instantly notice the close resemblance, because both of them look unfinished in the waist. And that's the idea, again, with the incubus being born prematurely. It was not ultimately finished in terms of its body, and this influence comes from this concept, like, of this Baphomet, whatever this deity is, that was created by some guy named Eliphas Levi, and apparently it's tied to some kind of a cult that people were worshipping at some point in this world. And so that's where the, I guess, main link of how the incubus looks, or the design of it looks, the developers got it from this particular picture that you'll see of the Baphomet. Very close. Obviously, you can see that everything looks pretty close to one another, short of a couple of little details here and there. But yeah, that's where its main concept came from for the developers. There's also little hints left within the game itself before you encounter the incubus. In the Les's room, there's a blue drawing somewhere on the ground, and I remember seeing it in the walkthrough, and it sure enough vaguely and slowly resembles the incubus you encounter later on. I'm also hanging on some kind of picture near a wall someplace there in nowhere. There's also something else that looks like the incubus itself. So again, another little cameo of what you're going to encounter sometime soon. The incubus also has these strange markings on its body. It's still up for debate, apparently, as to what they are supposed to represent. You're looking at a picture of it here. It looks like it says AARAZ on the left wing, or our left wing, how it looks like on our end, or the right wing on our perception, SAROA, but who knows what that means. Some people say that it has to do with the Greek alphabet. Is that right? Because if that's the case, then somebody let me know. But also, you'll notice also with the incubus, it's a hermaphrodite. It has both male and female characteristics. Obviously, the biggest female characteristic seems to be that it has boobs, like it has boobies on it. And so whenever the incubus first emerged within the game itself, it was plainly obvious to see that it was male, but that it generally had women's breasts on it as well, because, truth be told, it's supposed to be a hermaphrodite. It's both man and woman all together at the same time. So great is the incubus within the first game that it is one of the few rare monsters that appears as cameos within multiple other games. Obviously, with like the Red Pyramid and the Nurse having so much influence and being in multiple games, such is this creature as well. For example, in Silent Hill 3, there's a picture of it in a book that's found within Silent Hill 3. The book is called like Silent Hill's Ancient Gods, and you're looking at a picture of it here, and sure enough, there it is. There's a tiny portion of it here on one of the pages that shows it in person. If you go to Silent Hill 4, one of the people encountered within the game itself is a young kid by the name of Jasper Gine, and he's a troubled young man of sorts apparently, but he is proudly wearing an Incubus shirt, and you'll see a picture of it here. And on that shirt there's the word Hauries, Hauries, somewhere on it, and it's supposed to be another name for Flauros, which is another part of the game itself. Also, in yet another version of the game, if you go to Silent Hill Shattered Memories, apparently, because with Shattered Memories it's a little different. It takes, remember how I was telling you all earlier that I kind of hate it when games go in multiple directions if you do good or bad things. Well, Shattered Memories takes that to like the 10th degree, and so apparently if you do certain things in your profile and it goes certain ways in the story, then you may or may not see a picture of the Incubus, like a drawing of it, hanging in some kind of projector of some sort. In fact, you're looking at a picture of it here. But apparently this is like a rare thing. Again, you have to go through so many motions on your profile, and you have to have the game do so many things in order for it to just get to this point. And then finally, in Silent Hill Downpour, which is one of the last versions of Silent Hill games, there is a painting that's found on the first floor of a building called a Centennial Building, and there it is what looks to be, yet again, a picture or a painting of the Incubus hanging there too. But that's not it, because also the Incubus is found within the play novel, the novelization that the regular novelization, which you see a picture of here, and then on top of that, it is found in the play novel too, which you'll see a picture of here as well. So lots and lots and lots of versions of the Incubus that are found within the Silent Hill franchise. One last thing, and this is pretty recent too, one of the recent comics within IDW, printed, IDW, which does again a huge slate of Silent Hill games, Silent Hill comic books. They do a pretty good job of it. I highly recommend checking them out when you have a chance. Well, one of the most recent ones is called Anne's Story, and one of the pages showcases what looks to be the Incubus again, which you're looking at a picture of here. The difference is it's kind of dark, it's kind of hard to see, there's not much detail, but it certainly has the outline associated with the Incubus from the very, very first game. So yet again is another particular version of this thing in the franchise. The sad thing is, with all, I guess, the power and all the influence that this thing has, it was never introduced within the games. Within the films. So Silent Hill 1 film and then Silent Hill 2, the Revelations film, nothing at all. I don't even think nothing as close really stands out as it being within the game itself. I mean, from the game in the film itself. So having it not be there, who knows? Maybe in one of the future movies, who knows altogether. But again, it's left out in the open for that to occur. Now, let's quickly talk about the other version encountered within the game. If you go through the bad motions and do the bad things in the game that you're not supposed to do, then you get the bad plus ending, which is instead, it's just a simple twist. Instead of having this Incubus rise out from Alessa, instead you actually take on Alessa herself. So the guy Kaufman throws that red liquid, whatever that is, on Alessa, she collapses, and then this time, instead of that thing popping out from behind her back, instead it kind of like remains her. And so that's where you're essentially fighting Alessa, which is kind of weird because the way the game developers made Alessa, she looks very heavenly. Obviously, she's got like that white glow to her. She's wearing the white clothes, pristine white clothes. She looks essentially heavenly, nothing like any of the other games encountered, yet she is essentially dealing the same damage and doing the same exact thing that the Incubus does within the other version of the game itself. This time though, the lightning looks bluish rather than reddish, but it still has the same horrible effects. I mean, you get hit with it, even if you have just a slightly tiny bit of damage, and that's it, you're done. The only difference is now it takes less bullets to kill, in this case, the incubator, which is the name of this thing, whatever Alessa turns into. And all it takes is a couple of best bullets, and then that's it. You're done. History is finished, and the game is done, and then you go to the proper endings. So if you go through the bad motions again, then you encounter this incubator, which is supposed to represent essentially Alessa being the incubator of what could have been the incubus. Obviously, incubator is something that holds like a baby. It's supposed to like protect the baby, keep it alive, and so forth. That's basically what Alessa is when it comes to her. And her role within the order, where she holds and essentially brings forward this incubus. And so when that's why her role, and whenever she becomes that, I guess, final boss and monster, she's instead known as the incubator. But otherwise, the only other difference is whenever she transforms into the incubator, she looks a little bit more older, I guess you could call it. She looks like someone in her teens or someone in her late or early 20s, rather than the little girl that she was from before. And other than that, then she is pretty much the role of the incubus, like the same powers, same levitation, same lightning, just different colored, and so forth. But yeah, those are it. Those are the two final monsters, or version of one monster split over two versions depending on the endings that you get, that you'll encounter. But otherwise, the influence that they've had, and obviously the versions that are seen within many other games, still last to this day. Even then, like for example, the incubator, she's found in the play novel, which you're looking at a picture now. Also, she's found in Silent Hill 3, of which you're looking at another picture here. Again, it shows the influence that these very final bosses have had within the Silent Hill franchise game. After you defeat both versions of the monsters, then that's when it goes into the endings. One of them involves yourself being saved by Alessa. She hands you the baby, and then you escape with the baby. And then if you get the really good ending, then not only you escape with the baby, but also you escape with Sybil. Otherwise, Sybil would die, apparently, there. But otherwise, those are it. And I'll talk about more of those whenever I give my final thoughts on the Silent Hill 1 game altogether. But yeah, the Incubus and the Incubator. If anyone has any more details they wanted to give, something I might have missed out. Lots of stuff to talk about, obviously, with this being the final boss, which counter within the games. I'd be most interested on hearing. What were your thoughts as far as these bosses? Like, were they all they were meant to be? Like, were they as hard, as difficult, as powerful, as memorable as they should be? It'd be great to hear your thoughts on this too. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.